Hello, everyone. I'm your host, Manoj Tandon, with another episode of Dark Rhino Security's Security Confidential. Today, we have a great guest joining us. I'm honored to have him. He's another podcast host in the cybersecurity business. And Eddie's joins us. Eddie has a great background. He's a regional sales manager at Data Locker. He's a best-selling author. He's been featured on ABC, CBS, and Fox. Eddie has worked with multiple Fortune 500 companies to improve their revenue and was named one of the top business professionals by the Chamber of Commerce. Eddie hosts a popular show, Simply Secure Podcast. I think I got that right. Where he talks about all things cybersecurity, and I would encourage you to check out his show, in fact. We'll put the link to it. A lot of great topics are discussed there. When he's not talking or working in cyber, he can be found creating cutting boards and wood furniture with his passion project, ET Woodworks. Welcome to the show, Eddie.
Happy to be here, Manoj. I feel like you hype me up a lot, so hopefully I don't disappoint the audience.
It's a privilege to have folks do this show, and we're honored to have you. So it's great. And, to all our listeners, before we started this podcast, I had a list of questions that I was going to go through with Eddie, and I'm kind of throwing those out the window here a little bit because, there's some things in common that I have with him. We both started a podcast in cybersecurity, and I will, by your own words, Eddie, I guess there was a little deficiency in knowledge on cybersecurity when this all started. I'll be polite about it. We share that history, and we share a lot of the why on why Security Confidential exists and why Eddie's Simply Secure podcast exists. So with that in mind, I'd like to take a little bit of a twist here and kind of get to know Eddie a little bit better and get some of his deep insights and learnings that are going to be practical. So I know if you're a CISO listening to this, you might get a little bored here because we're not going to do a lot of technical stuff. But if you have a deep interest in cyber and want actionable knowledge, this is absolutely going to be the episode for you. Right.
So I'll add on to that, Manoj, from the fact of a lot of the times, the CISOs, CISOs, however you want to communicate that, a lot of the times they aren't as technically advanced as everybody may think. So taking the time to have conversations like this typically allows you to develop that other side, the leadership side of the CISO, right? And how to manage teams and lead teams and communicate inside a boardroom so you can understand some of the technologies and things that you need. So I always like to look at it as like it's a good change up sometimes from the technical side, because although a lot of CISOs are technically advanced from the aspect of they know how certain things work, when you start getting into the weeds of those things, a lot of times that's their team handling that, right? Handling like the specific softwares and tools and things that they're going to be using, but it's their job to make sure the overarching business needs are actually taken care of and satisfied. So hopefully, if you're a CISO, you'd appreciate that.
Hey, so Eddie, you're a sales professional. So one thing that that came to mind, and I've spent over 20 years in selling myself. So how did you or do you establish credibility with the CISOs or CISOs or CIOs or anybody out there where they might see you as, well, it might be a little self-serving because you're trying to sell them something, right? How do you avoid that perception and be more of an honest advisor to them? Curious what your approach is to that.
That's an incredible question, Manoj. That's absolutely incredible question, because the CISO itself, when you think about C-suite of security and C-suite in IT, so even a CTO, a CIO, things like that, right? What I've found, and this is just from my personal experience, they are more salt of the earth type of people than anybody else that's typically in the C-suite. That is just my personal experience, right?
Okay.
So with that being said, no, I don't just reach out, say like randomly on LinkedIn and try to go straight to business or and things from that perspective, right? Or just try to pitch my products and things from that perspective. I try to find ways to genuinely add value to the communities that they already abide in, right? So if I can be inside of different Facebook groups and LinkedIn groups and things like that, or even following different CISOs and people that's on LinkedIn that's already adding value to the community, I just try to show up there and add like little insights and little tidbits, right? And not to make it like something that, hey, if you want to learn more, then go follow this link. It's like, no, can you just genuinely add value? If somebody has a question about encrypted hard drives or how do you manage USB ports, then I'm just going to add value from what I already understand to be true. And from there, genuine connections start to happen. Somebody might say like, hey, I really appreciate what you shared about this particular topic. Would love to connect. Okay, once we connect, I'm not then again spamming them and saying like, hey, you want to learn about everything that I know about USB and encryption and things from that perspective. It's more so like, hey, I'm just curious about your career. And that's, I think my podcast plays into that a little bit more as well, because I am, like you mentioned, when I first got into the space, I literally had no prior knowledge, right? Nothing, zilch. I had no way
to that club.
I had no way to talk the lingo, right? Like talk the talk with these guys. So I genuinely would just ask and be like, "Hey, I would love to pick your brain. I'm fairly new to this space. I would just love to know about your career path. How'd you get there? What are the things that keep you up at night? What, how do you lead your teams? How do you best allow the people in your organization to see you guys as a benefit instead of just like the parents that's slapping their wrists all the time?" Like, I genuinely just wanted to know the answers to these questions. And majority of the people that I connect with primarily through LinkedIn are 100% open to just sharing their knowledge. And they feel like it's like that exchange of value is something that's beneficial to them. I would say the majority of the people that's even been on the show, I haven't even talked to about data locker services, right? It's just like, hey, I just want to get to know you. Will I see you at RSA? Will I see you at Black Hat? And just genuinely develop these great relationships within the space and inside the industry.
and that's key. And what you're doing is a chapter out of that famous classic book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, right? It's classic. People love to talk about themselves. They love to share knowledge, and you're in turn sharing knowledge with them. So there's always value being added in both sides of the conversation. It's not a, here's a brochure, man. Do you like this? If not, I can sell you this. I can sell you this.
Exactly. And I can tell you right now, from the conversations that I've had, every single security person hates that. Here's another thing that I learned too, is it doesn't matter if you have the solution to a security person's problem. If you approach them in the wrong way, they will still ignore you. They will go try to find a competitor or someone else, because if you approach them in the way of like, hey, just buy my stuff, right? Or hey, just, like, I got what you need. Like, I know you've been breached or hacked. I know you need this solution, right? If you approach them in that way, they're automatically just going to be like, no, I don't even want anything to do with this guy. He's kind of like fear mongering from that perspective. I don't need that aspect. I want a trusted advisor, right? Because when you just
you know what,
that's
90% of the field, though. FUD, right? Fear, uncertainty, and doubt has been a classic sales tactic in this industry that we're in.
Absolutely.
And you mentioned something on in one of your podcasts that you, in fact, when you're trying to figure out if your solutions that you represent are a fit for a client, if they're not, then you like to keep a list of companies in your back pocket that might genuinely be able to help those companies.
Absolutely.
How does has that gotten you in trouble with Data Locker or any of the companies you represent? Or
no? So the thing behind that is, again, we're coming back to this idea of trusted advisor, right? So if all you have to offer is what you sell, then how much are you really a trusted advisor, right? It's pretty much you're always trying to fit somebody into a mold of what you sell, right? So I like to have those different recommendations and people in my back pocket and relationships with some of those other salespeople, because it is like a warm handoff. Like, hey, Yes, I work with, say, Brian. Brian's an incredible individual. He's done incredible things with these customers that I already have had. I want to pass them on to you. That doesn't get me in trouble with Data Locker, primarily because we are primarily everything that we do is sold through the channel anyway, right? So there's
Okay.
not a lot of direct contracts and things that we have with our clients specifically. It typically
Okay.
goes through like a CDW or something from that perspective. But the other thing is Data Locker is so niche that it, like other security products, never overlap. Like what we do really well is encrypted USBs and how to remotely manage those USBs. Like that is
Yep.
what we do. And typically all the other security tools and stacks and things like that, they include, a broader spectrum of security services. Whereas though ours is so niche and direct that I really don't, I don't ever shoot myself in the foot or stab myself in the foot when I'm talking to those clients. It's literally just
You
an
know,
exchange of value.
there's a lot of questions I have on that, and I'm gonna stick a pin in it for a second, and we're gonna circle back to USBs in particular
Solid.
at some point, because that's a topic that comes up more often than not.
Yep.
But one topic that comes up even larger now. Understand, like we primarily service small medium businesses, those companies that are sub 2,000 employees.
Yep.
That's how we look at a small business. Now, in that space, one of the things that is often said, sometimes implied, sometimes direct, is that cybersecurity, there's such a sea of information, and there is such a plethora of technology out there that almost all the discussions get focused on technology. So for those companies that are starting or trying to elevate their cybersecurity journey, how do they navigate that sea of information?
Yes.
How would you get them through those rough waters? Guide us a little bit.
Yeah, that's an incredible question. And I had an absolutely phenomenal conversation with a guy by the name of Kareem Hijazi over on the Simply Secure podcast. And he basically went step by step through, if you are a brand new company, how do you look at cybersecurity? How do you identify whether you build one from the inside or hire, outside help like an MSSP or anything from that perspective?
Yeah.
And I think that'll be a great one to kind of dive deeper into this conversation in itself for anybody who wants to take that further. But what I've learned is if you are a small business, you got to get help. It is very rare that you have, a security professional. You might have an IT guy that you try to dump security onto, right? Yeah. But it's very rare that you have a security professional inside of your organization. And if that's the case, I would highly recommend you find an MSP or an MSSP that can help you navigate those waters. Very much like, again, becoming a trusted advisor, right? These are the types of people who you don't necessarily have to have the infrastructure inside to be able to make sure that all of your data and systems and technologies are secure. What you want to do is find that MSP that's willing to have a conversation with you and identify what your true goals are as a business, compared to just coming in and saying like, hey, this shoe fits all the businesses sub 2,000 employees. Just go ahead and run with this security stack and you're going to be all set. No worries, no problems, right? You want to find somebody that's willing to sit down, truly understands how your business works. That's another conversation I had with a guy by the name of Keon Williams, who's he's the owner of Class LLC, which is he pretty much is like a cybersecurity MSP, MSSP from that perspective as well. But he talks about, his approach of going in and having conversations with every single person a part of that business. Because some of the issues that people run into is that you come in as an MSP or you talk to these MSPs. Let's think from the aspect of the CEO of this small business. You're talking to these MSPs and these different providers, and you're saying like, hey, I need you to come in and help with these different things. And the MSP is basically saying, again, here's the shoe that fits everybody. Whereas though Keon's approach is more so, hey, let me talk to your chief of finance. Let me talk to your accounting person. Let me talk to your marketing person. I want to understand how they use all the technology that's already inside of your environment. And then I want to talk about, if we do make changes, how much disruption is that going to cause inside of your environment? Do you actually need to cause that kind of disruption that's going to, decrease productivity inside of the environment? Or is there a way to bring in a different tool that's going to kind of overlap all those different needs of everybody inside of the organization? So it's a much deeper and extensive upfront conversation, it might take you, 2 to 3 months to identify the right person that's going to be helping you with your security efforts. But my biggest thing is if you're a small company, sub 2,000, you don't have those IT people in place, or the security people, sorry, specifically, then you definitely want to find some kind of help. It's okay to say, hey, I need help, and invest in some type of MSP or somebody that can help you navigate those waters because they've had the experience there.
Well, let me see if I can purchase some landmines from you.
Okay.
Right now. So, and what I mean by saying that is, are there simple tests or questions that you've seen asked that if you're an owner of the business or a partner in the business or decision maker, as the case may be, that you should be asking potential MSSPs to test and see if they might be a good fit for you or not?
It's a great question.
And you don't have any kind of a cybersecurity background.
Right.
But is there kind of like a rule of thumb or something that you would advise on?
So
that might
the
work.
number one question that I typically tell people to ask, Manoj, is the products that you sell proprietary to you, or are they a combination of a bunch of other different vendors? Does that make sense? Because and the reason why I ask that question is because I want to understand if somebody is literally just trying to sell me their bag of tricks, right? And their bag of tricks may have holes in it and things from that perspective. Or are they truly going out and establish inside of that marketplace where they know different technologies that are already available, that have proven track records, they have the experience inside of the industry, so I can not necessarily put all of my eggs in one basket, right? Like I have a couple of different ways that I understand that person is going to bring value to me, right? So that's one of the first things I want to understand is what you're selling it as an MSP. Is that everything, or MSSP, is that everything that you just created as your own infrastructure, or are you working with the industry to bring security standards to your clients, right? Another thing Brilliant. I want to know is basic, like I want to understand how available are you? so I know obviously you can't be available typically 24/7, things like that, but if a breach or something was to happen, say events like Log4j and things like that was to happen, how quickly can I get a hold of you if it is late at night or whatever else it may be, at least for you to set me at ease, right? Like I typically I won't, depending on the grade of the breach or the issue or whatever else it may be, I don't need you immediately.
The criticality of it.
Exactly. Yeah. But I want to at least know that you're available. And if I have questions, or if somebody from my boardroom is asking me questions, I can at least extend those over to you and get an answer in a reasonable amount of time, right? It's not going to take me days or weeks or anything like that to figure that part out, right? And then from there, I always ask for references, man. I mean, like I'm a big person on relationships. I'm a big relationships guy. So I feel as though if you don't have people that I can reach out to that you've already established good relationships with, and ask them questions about the service that you provide and feel confident in their answers, then typically I just, me personally, I don't really want to do business with you, right? It's kind of like that old adage, I'd rather do business with somebody that I know compared to somebody that I don't, right? And I can't trust or understand. So you can give me lip service all day long about how great you are, but as soon as I talk to a client, they say like, oh no, they weren't available during Log4j. They just kind of like shut their doors and gave us nothing. Then that's important information to know. So I don't choose you as an MSP.
See, that's great. So for everyone listening, this is all fantastic advice. And it really nothing to argue with. That's exactly right. Right. I'd go along with those. Mm-hmm. When you, since we're on the topic of landmines, let's ask another one here. So one of the things is friction. Friction with cybersecurity and the business, and friction of cybersecurity with the CIO.
Okay.
The two, and sometimes they overlap.
Yep.
Both of those. So do you think, first of all, how should a security organization, what should they do to minimize that? And should you consider pulling the security organization out from under the CIO's office and making its own function?
So that's an incredible question as well. And that's one that I continuously ask almost every single guest that comes onto my show because I'm trying to gather like a bunch of data and responses, right? Of like how different people will approach this. And from I would say the 25 different conversations that I have, at least 20 of them always comes back to communication. Always come back to communication. And communication from the aspect of like the friction happens because somebody is unaware or misinformed on what actually needs to be done, right? Whether that is
right.
the CISO is misinformed of what the actual needs of the business are, or the CIO or CTO is misinformed on what's really required to accomplish the needs of what the business are, right? But at the end of the day, I feel like how you kind of bridge that gap and decrease the amount of friction there is one, as a CISO, your job is going to be harder. We already know this, right? In the industry itself, your job in security is just harder, right? But from the aspect of you need to learn how the entire business operates. Typically, and this is why I said early on when we first started this conversation will benefit a lot of CISOs, right? Because again, if you're just leaning on your technical expertise and your technical knowledge, then when it comes to trying to determine or communicate and discuss what you're trying to accomplish or why you need more money for a certain security tool or something like that inside of the boardroom or inside of that C-suite conversation, right, where everybody's sitting around the table and like, hey, you know, what's going on with the business today and how can we improve it and things from that perspective. If you're not confident in sharing the details and things that and the findings that you found within that organization and connecting that to the overall business goals and not just the goals of the security team, right?
Yeah.
If you're not effectively able to do that, then most of the time your contributions are going to fall on deaf ears, right? Like that's why I appreciate people like Keon who said like, hey, I'm going in and I'm talking to the accountant guy. I'm talking to the marketing person. I'm talking to all these different individuals because you can also start to use the lingo of those individuals so they understand what you're talking about, right? If you go in and say like, hey, you know, I need a API token that's going to allow me to use SAML2 to be able to connect with my individual firewalls and blah, blah, blah. It's like, whoa, I have no idea what you just communicated right there, sir. Right? Like the CEO has no idea what that means. CMO has no idea what that means. Right? But if you start to communicate in a way that they understand and they can take that as contextual information and apply it to how that affects the business, then it's going to give you a better opportunity to be able to reduce that friction that's there because now you're speaking in their language, right? You're speaking in terms of they understand of how that applies to their everyday life, not just coming to them and saying, hey, I need more money because we have some vulnerabilities inside of our infrastructure.
You know, I got the answer I was looking for, and there's a key word there that you said. It's contextual information. And I think that is 99.9% of the problem that gets lost in the communication. It's and that's just my personal opinion of it, but it's the end users don't have context of the threats that face them, but they absolutely understand how to do their jobs. And you're not going to do something to them that's going to make them stop doing their jobs. That's not going to happen. You know, the business is not going to stop because of cybersecurity. Okay. You look at the C-suite, they understand how their business is run. They, again, don't have the context of the threats that face them and the potential issues that can really arise should something untoward happen. And it's building that context. You know, it's a root cause of shadow IT. I mean, how much do we see out there of that? You know, people are buying their own solutions because, you know what, they're going to do their job. And if you're an hindrance, well, they're just going to push you out of the way, kind of thing.
Yeah, it's very important as well. I'll add on to that, Manoj. It's very important for you to understand the risk appetite of your organization as well, right? It's
Bingo.
very important to
And Eddie,
understand
how
that.
would you suggest? Yeah, how do you do that? So risk is, while one person may be very comfortable working under a pot of molten steel, another person doesn't want to leave the confines of a safe cubicle, right? I mean, there's two extremes there.
Of course.
Right? And they both could exist in the same organization. So risk is, again, contextual.
Yes.
I mean, to the person standing underneath the molten steel,
that comes down to leadership, to be honest. It comes down to leadership and the board, right? Like, so a lot of times what I would typically recommend people do is you identify from your board what level of risk are you willing to take, right? Obviously, you can come in as a CISO and all your board wants you to do is make sure that you're compliant. Just make sure we're compliant. Now, we all know as security professionals, compliant doesn't mean secure, right? So
I'm so glad you said that.
So you can come.
It has no correlation.
Exactly.
But good security, compliance is a natural outcome.
Yes, exactly. So when you think of it from that perspective, right, you might have these different, especially like you see it a lot in kind of startup situations and things like that. It's like, just make me compliant. I just want to do whatever I need to do on paper so as I can continue to serve and grow this revenue and everything else, right? Which, again, you come back to this whole idea of employment and things from that perspective. If you feel unsafe or unsure or uncomfortable inside of that environment, like, I just need to make it compliant, then you don't have to accept that job, right? You don't have to put yourself in a situation where, like, I feel as though we need to be doing all of these things and the business just wants me to do this, right? Like, kind of like hand ties you and say, sit on your thumbs until, a breach happens or something like that, right? So that could be very frustrating.
Well, yeah, and then guess who's going overboard when that happens?
Exactly.
And your hands were tied, so you're not going to stop yourself from going overboard.
Exactly.
Either.
Yep. So that's, when it comes to like that risk appetite in itself, Manoj, I tell people all the time, man, like, identify before you put yourself in the role itself. Identify what that risk appetite is. Get a list of requirements and things that the board wants to see overall, and then you do your own analysis. Right? Take the time to be like, okay, well, I'm gonna do my own internal analysis. I'm identify what vulnerabilities I maybe see with this and things from that perspective. And then again, we come back to that communication piece. So now, if you're able to efficiently communicate and articulate what the vulnerabilities are that you identified compared to the list of requirements, which may be just compliance inside of that organization, you can say like, hey, I can give you this, but here's all the other stuff that's still out there that's going to probably bring some concerns and things like down the road, right? So that way you're at least communicating that to them. You're documenting that to them. They understand like, okay, this guy, although we gave him a task, he's gone above and beyond. He's given me the different aspects and things that I need to at least be aware of. And then they, as a business, can make the decision. And kind of, it doesn't take you off the hot seat because, like, obviously people are going to always point it back to you from that perspective. But
there's always a fall guy.
Exactly. But here's the thing. Most security teams also realize that that's the case, right? So even in that situation, if you can share, as you share your story in interviews, post that event or whatever else, you can communicate, listen, I documented this. I told them this was an issue that could possibly happen. This was just, they were willing to take the risk. Obviously, the risk did not pan out. So here I am in this position having a conversation with you guys.
Oh, yeah. Well, and Eddie, what you're saying is not only true, but it points to the fact that developing this context around cybersecurity, whether it's with risk or compliance, these are hard conversations, and they can tend to make people, especially in smaller organizations where the organizations tend to be more flat, they can be difficult to have with the decision makers because there's this notion, there's the obvious thing of job security. If I ask these questions, am I putting myself in jeopardy? I guess the opposite would be if you're a cybersecurity professional, your career is always in jeopardy because if something bad happens, So, someone's going to be the fall guy.
Yes. But the cool thing about that as well, though, is there's always, like, obviously we know, Manoj, there are more positions available than cybersecurity professionals, right? So,
Sure.
like, at the end of the day, here's it's a morality thing. I always bring back things to values, and I'm a huge value guy, right? Like, the decisions I make on a daily basis.
In this world, that's a rare commodity.
I know, right? but you think about the values. Like, for me, I stand on 6 major values. The first 3 typically always comes from: 1 is my faith, 2 is my family, 3 is my business. That's typically
solid.
my first 3, and we don't have to go into the other 3 at the moment, but from a morality perspective, that's where I base all of my decisions from. So if I feel like I'm in an employee role where I feel as though those values are being challenged, right? I have no problem standing on, like, no, this is what I believe. And not to say that I won't bend in some areas, right? Like,
sure.
For example, if I got to stay a little bit later so I can finish a project, obviously that's sacrificing a little bit of time with my family. Sure. Maybe I got to travel on a Sunday or something from that perspective, right? Like, those things, like, it's room for bending and things from that perspective. But when it starts to get way outside of the realm of what you expect of me or whatever else it may be, I have no problem voicing those concerns. And if at that point it feels as though there's no point of compromise, or there's no point of, like, hey, you're just going to do this because I told you to do it. To be honest, I have no problem just cutting ties. And again, I'm not telling anybody to just go out and just quit their jobs and things from that perspective. But for me and my faith and what I believe, I feel as though if you do the right thing, other doors will open, right? I wouldn't sacrifice my own morality and my own values just to make somebody else happy within an organization that I'm working for.
See, you make an argument that is very difficult to challenge. I mean, there will always be the materialists who will say, well, you got to always make things work. But if I'm reading between the lines, you brought a little bit of a spiritual bent to it. So it's,
yep.
At that point, the motivations are different, and that's a very good thing. I don't think that's, if a lot more people were like that, maybe we'd have a lot fewer breaches. Speaking of which, what are some of the biggest mistakes you've seen security teams make? Just curious, in your own experience, things that really went wrong.
So, it's funny because I haven't been in the industry that long, right? But I've experienced some different things. But I've came into this incredible space of cybersecurity in August of last year, end of August of last year, right? So it's not like I've had an incredible amount of experience with different breaches and things like that. But what I can say is, based off the conversations that I've had, and then even all the sales conversations that I've had with different organizations, I think the biggest mistake that happens is a lack of communication and responsibility that happens between the security teams and the people that they serve in an organization, right? Like, I feel as though sometimes there's an air sometimes about the security team that's just not true. For example, I think the rest of the organization, the employees, right, who just have to do their job and complete their tasks, they think the securities team is there to just prevent them from doing their job, right? Making it difficult for them to do their job.
100%. I agree with that. And if you ask most of them, who's your cybersecurity guy, they say, we've never seen him. It's probably some guy in a hoodie in the back room.
Exactly, right? Where I feel as though, one, that's an issue, right? But it's responsibility on both sides. I think, yes, it is the responsibility of the security team to get out there and communicate and ask questions and engage with the rest of the business. Like, I love a guy, I think his name is Anthony Johnson. He's on, and I haven't had a chance to talk to him personally yet, but I've listened to him on different podcasts, and he's, through his posts and things on LinkedIn. And at one conversation, he was talking about every time he hires a new security person, it's a part of their onboarding that he gives them a list of 30 people that he has to go and talk to that's not on the security team. Like, you have to go and engage with these different individuals, have conversations, understand how their day-to-day works and things they need to accomplish, because it'll help that security professional understand what he's taking away when he makes changes in his job. Does that make sense?
That makes complete, and that's actually
Yes.
brilliant. I think that is brilliant, and that's a tip that's
Yes,
actionable.
exactly.
And I think, one of the things that we forget is that cybersecurity is completely a business problem. It's not an IT problem. And so we have to contextualize it with the end users, and that would bring them into the equation. And, it's surprising if a lot of those, if you look at all the workers in a company and you actually take the time to try and explain why certain things are being suggested to be done in a certain way, it's not meant to be an inconvenience to them. If they understand that why, you get your friction level goes way down.
100%.
Versus you just create a list of policies and then you roll them out and say, here they are, people, you got to follow these guidelines. Right. And you know what? People give them lip service, but
exactly. It's funny because you bring up another great point, because I got another friend of mine. His name is Andre Walls. He's the CISO for Customers Bank, and
he was he's been a guest,
and he's awesome dude. A lot of wealth.
He is a great guy. He had some fabulous tips. In fact, I think his show airs in a week or two.
I would definitely be listening to that. He's an awesome dude. I love him.
He is really good. Yes.
But I bring him up because he talked about, he was the first person that exposed my mind and my mindset to this idea that everybody in the organization is responsible for security. It's not just the security team. The employees are responsible, the CEO, everybody who works within that organization is responsible for security. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to be an expert in every single aspect, right? But you need to at least be aware of how different people could try to exploit you, whether that be through social engineering or these different attacks and methods that different hackers and people like that use, right? Attackers and things like that use. So it's up to the security team to educate, right? To take the time to say, not just the annual phishing campaign, right? But like have some kind of cadence where there is constant communication and education happening between the employees, the organization as a whole, and then the security team itself. So it's very, very important. I was like, man, that's so true. Like even me, I never thought about it. Me as an employee in sales, I need to be aware of these things, right? Like,
oh, you could, and especially since you're a mobile device user, you probably need to. You represent a juicy attack surface. If I'm on the dark side, I'm like, yeah, I know how I'm getting in 100%. That place. So let's switch gears a little bit here. If I'd like to get your insights from the guests you've had or your own experience. If you're in a completely unrelated profession, whether today you might work in a music store, you might be a medical professional, you might be a soldier, whatever the case may be, I'm picking things out of the air. If you want to transition to cybersecurity, how would you switch? Is there some thoughts that you might have that could guide something?
Number one, network. Number one is network. First, take a look at the people who you already know, who already have their foot in the door in cybersecurity. That's the first thing you want to do. Take an assessment. Who do I already know that's already a cybersecurity professional who can shed some insights, right? From there, you gotta start picking those people's brains about what you can do and what tools you can get your hands onto to get into cyber in itself, right? Because a lot of people now, again, when we think cybersecurity, I feel like a lot of people, they think about pen testers. They think about these specific roles within the space.
SOC analysts, pen testers. I mean,
where at the end of the day, that's not it, right? Like there's so many other pieces and moving parts to cybersecurity. So my thing is, I would come back to your why, right? We talked about this a little bit, right? Like your why. Why are you getting into cyber? Are you getting into cyber because you have a genuine interest in it? Are you getting into cyber because you hear the price tag that's on all these different cybersecurity roles that's out there at the moment? Like, why are you getting into cyber? I want to know that first, right? Because once you identify that, if you have a genuine interest, I would start to identify the different fields in which you can get involved in, right? And then this is probably going to be, a little controversial to popular belief, but I don't think you necessarily have to go and get all of your certificates and certs and all that stuff all up front, right? I think it's a matter of identifying some of the different tools that's available, right? Like Kali Linux and all these different things that you can start playing inside of, and understanding and learning from that perspective before you start to specialize and kind of get really dive down deep into one specific area, right? That's my mentality. So first, just to kind of recap real quick, first you want to identify your network, right? Who's available that's already has a foot in the door.
Yeah.
Then you want to ask them questions about like, hey, what are some of the things that I need to know? Is there different certain specifics of tools or things that I need to understand, or at least start to get my hands on to start to understand and start to learn? 3, identify your why. You probably want to do that first, to be honest, but the network is very important. I feel like you could do those things in tandem, but identify your why, because it'll point you in a direction, right? It'll help you identify like, okay, do I just want like to do the most so that I can get into like the very specific niche roles inside of cyber, or do I want to have like a broad overview so that I can get into like entry level roles or things from that perspective, right? So this is going to kind of determine your path from there. And then at the end of the day, once you identify, what that why is and those individual pieces, you got to practice, man. I mean, at the end of the day, those interviews, from what I understand, is so much different from your regular old, post college interviews, right? Like your
Right.
technical knowledge is going to be tested. All those the interviews are just different. There's much more hands on. You're displaying what knowledge and expertise you actually have. So the more that you play with these different tools and play with the different things that are available to you, is going to put you in a much better spot when you're starting to apply for different roles. But here's the cool thing. It doesn't matter the background that you come from. I've literally had almost every different background come onto the show, man. People from military, people from HR, people came over from hospitality, people came from all different areas, right? But here's the cool thing. What you bring to the table in cybersecurity it's always going to be of value, because what you're bringing is a different perspective to that organization about how you may have been attacked as an individual in a different industry. Does that make sense? So like,
it makes complete sense.
So most people think like, oh, because
it makes complete sense.
A background in hospitality, what the heck does the cybersecurity team want to do with me, right? But it's like, there's a lot of vulnerabilities and insights you can now provide this team.
You can with a different context, but I think I would add one little piece to that, and that if you can demonstrate that you're a motivated personality, that is going to give you an edge over the pure technical guy, right? It's like the perfect, the 4.0 student with the perfect score on the SATs doesn't get into Harvard, right? It's the person that demonstrated some excellence in one area that they were passionate about, and they showed motivation. They got into Harvard, right? So I think that I would just add that.
I would agree 100%. Almost every guest I had on the show said you had to have this sense of, I'm trying to find like the right word. It's basically like a sense of like overcoming, right? Like it doesn't matter whatever obstacle is going to be there. You have like that motivation to be like, I'm going to figure this thing out. And it's unfortunate, but it's like, it's unfortunate and fortunate from the aspect of, I'm going to figure this thing out, whether it takes me until 5:00 in the morning and I got to go back to work, in the next 3 hours. Right. But like, those are the people that typically like security teams are like, yes, come in here. Like we need you. Right. Because they spend like, once they get that idea in their head or they get a problem that they need to solve, that's the only thing that they're thinking about. And it's like, how can I fix this? How can I get around this? What's the loopholes? What's this thing? What's that thing? and you just get lost
Yep.
into this world of like your own expertise, your own happiness. I look at it as like, for me, I compare it to when I'm doing woodworking, right? Like I'll go out into the wood shop after my kids go to bed, 8:30, 9 o'clock at night. And then the next thing you know, I'll look up at the time and it's 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, where the heck did the time just go? Right?
Oh man.
It's because I just got into my own zone.
Sure, your wife loves that.
But it's I got into my own zone of like, basically like doing joinery or finding out, the different ways of how this piece goes to this piece. And after you get all the pieces cut out, now it's like putting together the puzzle. So it's like whatever that is for you, that's what you got to kind of identify if you're going into cybersecurity, because that's what most teams, they will 100% be like, I don't care what background you have the stuff. Like, when you think about old Space Jam with Michael Jordan, when they had the stuff, right? It's like, you got the stuff. We can bring you in and teach you the others, like teach you everything else, but you got the stuff that we can't teach.
Yep. But you gotta come with the stuff. Yep. You gotta come with the stuff. I get it. So let's circle back to the pin, which was the USB. We said we would circle back to it, and I want to make sure we get to it before we run out of time here. But so with the USB, I'll set a little bit of a stage here, and then I'll let you say what you need to say. So USB drives have been implicated in a lot of breaches.
Yep.
Right? So we look at Edward Snowden.
Yep.
We look at, I don't know if you remember Operation Nitro Zeus, which was how we destroyed the Iranian centrifuges. We left a whole bunch of USB drives around that area for free. And we're hoping that one of the guys who worked there would actually pick up a free USB, because people like free tchotchkes.
I wasn't aware of that. Wow.
And stick it into a computer. And that's exactly what happened. So, and I'm not giving away any secrets. This was all well documented in Sanger's book, The Perfect Weapon. He talked about it in depth. But how do you secure it?
It's a great question. It's an incredible question. And that really fits inside of the data locker warehouse. And I bring this up because not to just promote and say our product is the best or anything from that perspective, but I truly honestly believe that our developers and our team, that's what they focus on. They don't focus on anything else in cybersecurity other than USBs and how to manage them and how to secure them, right? So when you look at the USBs that Data Locker offers, everything is FIPS verified, right? FIPS certified from that perspective. Everything's encrypted with MD5 hashes and things from that perspective as well. But with the real power of what we do, it comes from the central management platform. So so to take your example, right? If you take this Iranian, all the USBs that was dropped inside of Iran and things like that, right? What would have been cool is if anybody else picked up that USB, you can basically geo-track where that USB is, what device it was plugged into, having a very extensive audit log of every single document that was copied over to that device, every action that was done on that device. That is what we do here at Data Locker. So the cool thing is you take, the way that you secure it, or the way you make sure that USBs is not a problem inside of your environment, is a two-part approach. One, you standardize the only USB or only types of USB that you're going to allow inside of your environment, right? And most people, they think about this through like, a GPO or some type, they might have a DLP in place, like an antivirus or something like that, that it's quote unquote included inside of there. But a lot of times the DLP is kind of like it's kind of like the afterthought of all the other security that's a part of the main stack. Does that make sense? But at Data Locker, what we do is our DLP is very, very specific in what it does and what it accomplishes. It takes what typically, if you want to allow a USB inside of your environment with the traditional DLP, it typically takes you between 26 to 37 clicks in order to allow or whitelist something inside of your environment. With the port blocker solution that we offer, it basically allows you to do that within 6 clicks, right? So if you plug in something inside of your environment, and you need, a user needs access to it, a salesperson is on the road, and they're like, hey, I just need to get access to this presentation, then you can quickly allow that inside of the environment. But the cool thing is now you also have the ability to manage a lot of these devices, right? So why I say standardize to one particular device. So for example, I don't even know if this is going to be a video podcast, but you take like perfect. So you take like devices like these, right? Which is data locker proprietary drives.
Yeah.
And these are devices that when you plug them in, you can standardize and say, hey, I want to go a Century One or I want to go with K350s. And now the only thing that you allow through that DLP is one of these two drives, right? Every other thing that's going to be plugged into that device on your network or any company machine from that perspective, everything's going to be blocked. It's not even going to get an opportunity to mount to the device in itself, right? And it does not affect your peripherals and the way the charge phones and things like that. It's just anything that tries to attach as a mass storage device is blocked. Does that make sense? So number one, you want to standardize your drive on what you want to do. Number two, you want to get a DLP, and it doesn't have to be port blocker, to be honest. But from my perspective, is I'm biased, but it's the best one. But
hey man,
but you identify a DLP that will allow you to just say, hey, I only want that drive to be the one that's allowed inside of my environment. It's a FIPS 146-2 drive. It's not going to get hacked into. It's not, it has the MD5 hash on it. It has a brute force detonate option to it. And I can manage this from anywhere inside of the world, right? So this drive, I can perform password resets. I can perform detonates, which unfortunately doesn't mean blow up and smoke is coming from the device and everything. I wish it did, but you can,
that would be
but you can perform all these remote capabilities. So if it does get, into the wrong area or into the wrong hands or an employee lost it or whatever else it may be, then you can make sure that data is not going to be leaked anywhere else, right? You can even set it up to where as though in different countries, if you're like, hey, I don't want this to be mounted anywhere in the country of China or Russia or anywhere like that, you set it up to where as though, hey, nope, you can't even mount inside of these environments. And to be honest, I haven't found any other solution that allows you to do that level of security with USBs. Everything typically USBs is just a free for all, right? You find one, you plug it in, it's good to go, right?
It is very much so.
Yep. Compared to an opportunity where it's like, hey, I don't think we're going to get away from USBs. I think every IT person was like, let's just get IT and security person. Let's just get away with.
Well, there's a lot of companies with policies that forbid USBs.
And we've worked with some of them. They've come in, they shut down all the USBs, and then it created a mountain of support tickets and help tickets. And people are like, "What the heck? I can't use this." So now, like, your IT team can't even do what they're required to do because they got thousands upon thousands of support tickets saying I can't access my USB or whatever else, and they didn't realize like how much a USB was used to update firmware, maybe a different company offline. What do you call it? Machines and things like that, right? So it became a huge issue. It became a huge problem. They're like, well, what the heck do we do now? Like, I really don't want to allow these things inside of the environment. And then, hey, they found a data locker, and then data locker's like, hey, yeah, we can actually help you, one, standardize your one type of USB drive. So whereas though if it does get lost, stolen, misplaced, we could just detonate it. And it's no longer, that data is no longer able to be breached. It's no longer able to be identified. You can't pull anything off of it. Even if you try to take the drive apart, there's a safety component inside of it as well that will basically crush that hard drive. Is no way to get that data off of there.
Man. Well, that's good to know. I didn't know that it went to that degree. So we're actually coming up on the 2-minute mark, and I wanted to make sure you got a little bit of chance to plug anything. You're a best-selling author. You've got a book out there. Is there anything in the last minute here that you want to bring our listeners' attention to? Anything at all?
It's a great question.
Talks, events,
and I appreciate the opportunity, to plug there. What I bring it back to is just the Simply Secure podcast, man. I think if you guys, my passion, although when I got into this industry itself, Manoj, like we already talked about, I had no prior knowledge or anything like that. So me starting the podcast was a little selfish. It was an easy way for me to ask security professionals, hey, can I just pick your brain and learn from you, right? And give them a platform in which they can share. So it was a little, like I said, selfish from that perspective, but at the same token, I think it provides so much value, and it it pertains to the CISO, it pertains to the new person, it pertains to the guy that's been inside of cyber, but he's maybe trying to make the jump into some type of leadership role or something from that perspective. I think the guest just brings so much value from different angles and different perspectives. So I highly recommend that you guys just pick on an episode, listen to it. If you don't like it, let me know. Like you'll never see me as a person that cries or is feels angry that you let me know that something wasn't good or something from that perspective. It helps me learn and it helps me grow. I feel like criticism is sometimes the best feedback. So if you want to listen to the Simply Secure podcast, you can go, simplysecurepodcast.com or anywhere that you listen to podcasts and check out an episode.
Well, and with that, we come to the end of this episode, and everyone, thanks for listening. Eddie, thank you so much for being gracious and joining us for the hour. And we'll look forward to see you back here again at some point in the future. It'd be great to have.
Absolutely, Manoj. You might have to have part 2 on my podcast, man. It might be a good opportunity.
I would love to do it. Would love to do it.
Perfect, man. Thanks for having me.